Yes.
Good evening, and welcome to the March 22nd meeting of the Planning Policy Commission. Tonight, we're going to have a short discussion on the vision that we created, and then we're going to have two public hearings, one on the development and design standards and the Issaquah Municipal Code regarding accessory ADUs. But before we do that, we have a guest in our midst tonight, a very important guest, who has asked, no, it's not, who has asked to make a few statements in front of us today. And I really think it's kind of, I don't want to use the word strange, but I will. This Madam Mayor is welcome at any time. We're excited and honored to have you here tonight, and we look forward to anything, any directions that you may give us to help us on our journey to make the city better. So, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was a very nice introduction.
And thank you for letting me sit in your chair.
Anytime. It's a little unconventional, I agree. But 2017 and beginning of 2018 are a little unconventional too. My main purpose for coming tonight was to recognize the fact that the work of this commission last year was very different from any year since I have lived in this city. You had an enormous number of meetings. You tried to challenge council to have the longest meetings. You had meetings that felt like you were doing your normal work of making recommendation, and others where you had joint commission meetings, which I thought were fabulous. When I watched them, I thought the conversations that you had as you crossed over from one committee to another was great. We have different expertise on all different commissions. You also had what I would call work session style meetings, where you had the public at the table with you, where you had members from former task forces with you, kind of taking a look back at why we set something up the way we did years ago, and is it still relevant now? And so it was just an amazing amount of work and an amazing amount of quality work to watch. I wanted to let you know, as mayor, I'm really excited about the product that you guys have been sending out from this commission and sending on to the council committee for review. So I thought I would come and share it with you, but it was really a strange year last year. So thank you all, and for those that aren't here tonight, thank you very much for your work. I also wanted to let you know that in watching all those meetings, something popped to my mind, that you had different kinds of meetings, had different feelings in terms of engagement and involvement, and that there is nothing hard and fast that you must sit at the dais to have your meetings. If you prefer to do it committee style, like council committee does, you can. If you prefer to do it work session style, it would be great for you to decide as a group what you feel is the best setup for your meeting. So we've sat at the dais, Joan, since I can remember, years and decades long, but I really felt like you got to a really interesting level of engagement when you were sitting in a different format. And that's not for me to dictate. I just want to let you know that you have options to do that, how you set up the room. I also wanted to thank you for your thoughtful deliberations. There were many different opinions. We're not looking for consensus from our commissions. We're looking for thoughtful deliberations so that everybody is getting all of their questions answered before you go into a discussion, and we don't expect you to vote unanimously on issues. We appreciate the fact that you come into this with different skill sets, different expertise, different job experiences, and that you're having these productive conversations. Want to make sure that even when we're bringing you something complicated, you are comfortable to keep asking questions until you have the answers you need to make a decision. We're sort of the translators, the staff and council and anybody else you work with, the translators between what is in code, which is not part of what you normally do for your work, and the policy question we're asking you to answer or help us on. And so If we're not giving you the proper translation, if it's still confusing, please keep asking your questions. It's when you guys have your best deliberations is when you've gotten all of your questions answered. So please push on us. The reason it's so important to me as a mayor is that the work you do here is just not in isolation. It doesn't end here. You recommend to council and to council committees how we should move on policy. You directly inform the decisions that we're about to make, and you are the ones that hold the public hearing. We don't necessarily hold a public hearing for many of the things that you send our way. This is the place where the public has the best opportunity to help you consider and shape the policy that's being recommended to council. So your work is hugely important. And if I will take a step back and say something we haven't always done well that I hope to do better is we haven't closed the loop with you. When your work moves on to committee and council, we don't always take everything that's recommended in this committee and adopt it. Sometimes for different reasons or because we've asked for more information, we either change what you say, we reject it and send it back, or we accept it. Oh, crap.
The bad phone.
It is a council member, just saying. Councilmember Batiste, sorry about that. So I want you to know that one of the things I want to work on this year with all of our committees and commissions is that when we take your body of thoughtful work and your recommendations back to committee and back to council, and we change or go in a different direction, we owe you that explanation back. At your committee meetings here, or commission meetings here, you should be hearing, hey, they didn't adopt zoning for light rail throughout the town. I mean, I heard that on camera, and I'm like, oh man, our bad, sorry. So when your stuff comes up and you've spent all this time thinking about it, we owe you a close-the-loop explanation of, hey, the council chose to take this path, and for these reasons, it will help you do your work better as these things come through. And so that's something that we're trying to change. And that's my big reason for coming tonight, to thank you for the amazing body of work you did last year for the, I was going to say quadruple time, but it's probably more than quadruple time if we add all the hours. I don't think the public realizes that you aren't paid and that you are all here because you're interested citizens. And I'm positive they have no idea how many hours you put in last year. So on behalf of the council and the administration, I just want to say thank you very much. We're very proud of the work you do, and we're looking forward to getting through this last big heap of moratorium items and others, and have a great year. Thanks for letting me come.
So I must go on and say thank you to Madam Mayor for, I've been on this committee for a long time, and this is the first time that a mayor or even a city council person, I think, has come to.
Last year. Stacy came on.
Stacy came. And I think we're all honored, and we've all enjoyed the experience that the city actually has given us to be part of this commission. So thank you again, and please do come back anytime that you feel that we need support or guidance or just to say hello. So thank you very much.
Well done.
Does that not make you feel good? It's good. I also would like to thank all of the members of the community and the task force that put so much time and effort into it. So all of you deserve the same recognition. Thank you. I know that a couple of you are here tonight. So thank you again for your support and your input. And I think we created a really good vision, and I hope that the council, if not accepting it, to even improve it and make it better. So with that, we're going to get back to our normal process. And so we have three things that we have to approve. So I need a motion to approve the minutes of the February 22nd meeting of the commission.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of the February 22nd, 2018 meeting.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I need a motion to accept the minutes of the February 28th meeting.
So moved?
I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 And the last one, for March the 8th.
I move to approve minutes from March 8th, 2018.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. So we're going to ask Keith, our illustrious leader, to lead us in a short discussion just to verify the changes that we've made to the vision. I assume that all of you have read it and are comfortable with what we've created. So Keith, you're on.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what would PPC be without discussing central Issaquah visions? Sorry. All right, so this evening, you guys have received what I heard in terms of final edits. Kind of, we went through this, we talked about some changes. We talked about the introduction to each neighborhood and having kind of some more narrative before we get into the list. Received a late but timely suggested edit from Ron in terms of the main vision statement to make it actually read like English instead of whatever it was. Had a couple extra words in it. So all of that is here. And so I don't necessarily want to go through this unless you guys notice something that you had expected to be in. So the other thing that was kind of a missing gap was the green necklace. So this language over here, you saw for the first time. This is the document. Trish and I talked about maybe the one thing that might make sense under this figure, because this figure's got numbers in it and there's no legend, to maybe put a note underneath it that says, for details, see the park's strategic plan. So that it at least would send you to a place that would then unpack this document, which is hopefully at some point going to be adopted like this. And ultimately, if it doesn't get adopted like this, then we'd have to come back in and change this figure out for whatever the council adopts at the end of the day.
So we're not going to have the number one means this, number two means that in the plan?
So the problem is when you duplicate stuff like that, then if you change it, then you got to change it in two places. So my preference is not to do something like that, but to say, if you want details, go here, because then as the park plan becomes a more fluid document, if it is, and I don't know, you just change things there and you don't have to go back in and change the CIP plan document.
I recommend you at least include the legend. And I don't know if there's enough white space there in terms of what like the lines and whatnot mean. I can get not
Okay.
wanting the numbers.
Okay.
Because that's the numbers, those little circles, that's like
Yep.
6 pages of stuff.
And well, and
but at
those
least-
might change. Probably the magenta arrow will not change. I mean, it'll still be, the location might change, but the magenta arrow will be the magenta arrow, which is the Mountains to Sound Trail. So I can do that. I think that's a good suggestion.
I would agree with that as well. And I had made a suggestion for parks last week that I see didn't get it adopted, so I'll bring it up again, which is that 1A and 1B.
Yes.
I think when they're small in that format, it looks confusing when they're lowercase, and just uppercasing the A and B, I think makes it a little easier for people to read.
And did you give that?
I did.
Okay.
I see it wasn't adopted, so I just mentioned it again, but I think it's just an easier thing for people to see.
Okay. I'll look to Trish to maybe remind Jennifer Fink that that was a suggestion to maybe help legibility. Trish is ignoring me.
No, I'm writing it down. Your every word.
All right. Any other comments, questions, thoughts? You can see the maps got changed. So, for example, now the Gilman Tail is there. Hopefully it gets a different name over time.
I would suggest on that page changing the colors because because the purple goes through, I can't quite tell that the stuff to the right is in the Gilman neighborhood. So I would expect to see different colored.
So you want the RGC to be different?
No,
Or
I
the-
want each of the neighborhoods to be a different
Oh,
color,
I
either
see.
in shading or
Right.
in outline.
Okay, so that like the Gilman outline could be a different color than the Pickering outline.
Yeah, or shading on it, either way.
Okay.
And a
Did you hear that, Kristen?
I did.
Awesome.
And the area underneath East Lake in the, yeah.
The
that-
Gilman Tail?
Yeah, so we probably want to put some sort of identifier to show where that is actually, what group that's part
Would
of.
we want to just repeat Gilman? I mean, you've got Gilman as a label. You can just
Well-
have it twice.
But Lindsay's comment,
Yeah,
so
the-
for example, if Gilman now is a green outline, and then Pickering is an orange outline, what you have then here is you'll have two lines, but it'll be clear that this down here is green, which becomes Gilman, if that's what color Gilman is.
Yeah.
So I think it's gonna work itself out.
Okay.
Because I agree. I mean, for me, the reason why the tail looks severed is because actually of the RGC line.
That's the point. Yeah.
There's a bar.
Otherwise, someone could
There's
look
so
at
much,
this and-
there's so much material to work with here. Sorry, we've had a long day. All right. And then, as you can see, once we get down to the neighborhoods, each of the neighborhoods then got kind of quite a bit of new language in before we then went to the lists. So it's a little bit of both.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. So,
On the neighborhoods, I have 3 comments.
Okay.
One, I would move the map up to the beginning of it, some portion, maybe between today and future or something. I think it's hard to visualize
Read it
the
without
maps.
seeing the map.
Yeah. Secondarily, if you're going to color the original map, I would continue those colors into the map that you're showing for each neighborhood. And third, the original version of this had images that were like example images, the original CIP
yes?
that had images for each of the neighborhoods. And I understand that you've got images up in the plan objectives,
Yes.
but
When you say images, do you mean photos, or do you
Yes.
mean? So-
photos that are examples of what this area is going to feel
So
like.
you would like some photos in each neighborhood just to provide some visual description and some interest?
Yes, and I believe I've mentioned that multiple times.
And I'm sure we've ignored it multiple times.
Absolutely.
So,
You told me it was coming later, and now that we're at final, I'm like, is this later?
well, I just want to clarify. So these are not the photos you want?
No.
You want-
No,
they're
I
not
want-
Categorized, you want them in the narrative?
It would be more
Yeah.
like, so
I
like,
just wanted to clarify,
Yeah.
because we thought that this is what you meant. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really want something, because the goal of these having neighborhoods is to distinguish each of them and to be able to show, okay, West Newport has a different feel than the other areas. And so,
I agree with that. I think it'll help it read as like you open to that neighborhood page and you kind of feel it. For people that are visual thinkers, you'll get that feeling of what that neighborhood is like rather than just the words on the page.
yeah, personally, I would put the today section, the map, and then a horizontal set of images right before the future, because that delineates, hey, this is what the future looks like, and the description.
okay,
Yeah, got it.
okay,
Got it?
okay. Any other things? AJ,
Can I wordsmith one line on the green necklace?
if you need to?
So on the part where we run with the jewels and strands metaphor, which I was really keen on.
That's better than running with scissors.
That's true. So the last sentence of the first paragraph.
Yes.
The way I thought of it, just because I think this is such a good metaphor, I wanted to be clear. Instead of saying green spaces, gathering spaces, and trails are the jewels and strands, to rearrange it to make clear what are jewels and what are strands.
Okay.
So I think it would be inviting green spaces and urban social gathering spaces are the jewels on the necklace, comma, and a network of connected trails are the strands of the necklace. Just kind of rearranging it so
Fantastic. Agreed.
And then I'll just comment, I missed this meeting and this looks really good.
Yeah.
So this is awesome.
Yeah, Ron put me down, but I'm okay with that. What? It's fine to say this is good, but it's like, it's way better than that other map we had. It's like, what the heck? Yeah, no, I know. I'm kidding with you guys. All right, any other comments, or are we good? Because you guys have already pretty much said, yes, send this forward. They will update this, and we will attach it to the agenda bill, because even though Land and Shores already had a conversation, they have not had an agenda bill. So we'll make these edits. We'll attach this version to the agenda bill that goes to Land and Shore. So it's going to be the 19th of April. You are all welcome to attend that meeting if you would like.
So once you get the pictures changed and a few little edits, could you send out that final perfect vision to all of us?
Absolutely. The question that I don't know, so we might have to put it in a Dropbox, Kristen, because I don't know how big it's going to be. So
I can post
Big.
it on the website and link it.
Okay. As long as we can get it to you guys. And so the other thing is you can see it electronically, but if you want a hard copy with colored pictures and stuff, we're more than happy to print it out. Just let us know. Okay. My time's up. I'm gonna.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
many hours with us.
Do I gotta do this now?
So are we going to have a presentation on the proposed amendments?
Yes.
Are we 10 minutes out of schedule?
Yeah, we're ahead.
What are we going to do if we don't get out of here by 11?
Really?
I have my all-night plan to sitting here till 11, so.
There you go. Okay, now this should be fairly straightforward, as we used to say in a previous time here. You've already seen these amendments. We showed them to you to sort of get an idea of what you were thinking at our last work session on the Green Necklace. So this is the proposal to limit new hotels, motels, timeshare lodging, conference centers, and completely enclosed storage units from central Issaquah only. So why? Why would we want to do that? Well, we currently have 5 hotel motels in the city limits. We currently have 6 completely enclosed storage unit uses in the city limits. And given what we want to accomplish in central Issaquah, being all the density, the housing, all the new growth in the next 20 to 30 years, we thought these uses might not be super appropriate everywhere, but just limit them in a few places in central Issaquah. Now again, we are not changing how permitted they are in the rest of the city. And I put those maps and the charts in your packet to show that we're not changing anything, but proposing to change in central. And you have just a question you just can't hold on
Yeah,
to.
this might be a dumb question, Trish. Why is the emphasis on completely enclosed
Because
self-storage?
if you look in the zoning code, that's how they are explained. So I wanted to be full disclosure, that's what we're limiting.
So non-enclosed self-storage was already not permitted, so that's just not in scope?
I would guess that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
So jumping back, I think I got everything there for why, if anyone was curious as to why. This is a great map of the current storage units are in bright blue, and the current hotels and motels are in bright green. Beautiful, beautiful, and the zoning, if you needed to know about the zoning. But we have a beautiful collection of each. And this is the existing zoning permitted land uses again, in central. And we're taking it from, we'll start with hotels. We're proposing to take it out of village residential, out of mixed use, out of destination retail, and out of intensive commercial, and leave it only in the urban core, which is the zone that has the Pickering neighborhood, which you know where that is, and most of the Gilman neighborhood, where you know that is. With a footnote, if you can read it, 25 is the Pickering, sorry, I misspoke, the Pickering neighborhood only, which would be north of the freeway in the urban core zone. And for storage, any questions on the hotel part? Okay, AJ?
Oh, go ahead.
So the storage is permitted,
Oh, we're not there yet.
No.
We're only doing hotels first.
wait, oh, sorry, so where's the asterisk or the note?
26?
25 is.
And this is also in your packet, this exact chart.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was looking at the top and not the bottom. I was getting
Okay.
confused. I'm okay.
And this exact chart is on page, with two sets of, I love this. It's either page 29 of 44 or 47 of 62, depending on which page numbers you go by. We're going to have to fix that in our future life.
So Trish,
They have
Yes.
options.
just to be clear, we are
Yes.
only discussing allowing hotels to be in the Pickering neighborhood only.
In central Issaquah.
Okay. I just
That's the
wanted-
only change for hotels and motels. Any other questions about hotels before we move?
Yeah, you're saying we're only talking about that in Central Issaquah. Are any of the urban villages, oh, I guess, what's village residential? That's not urban village.
Village residential, I believe, is over, I was getting there.
Yeah, it's West Newport.
Is where Gateway Anthology
Okay.
is. But
Okay,
thank you.
so this would not change anything on urban villages or areas out there. Great.
Correct. Correct. Now, for storage units, self-storage, completely enclosed, we are proposing to take them out of mixed use, out of village residential, out of urban core, out of destination retail, and out of intensive commercial. And we have a footnote for those in mixed use that say parcels fronting East Lake Sammamish Parkway Southeast or 221st Place Southeast only. So we're trying again to locate those as well in a location that seems to make more land use sense. Are there any questions on that one?
Sorry, Trish, I couldn't hear what you said.
I was explaining where we were proposing to take them out of, which zoning districts we're taking them out of.
Ah, okay.
With the places with the little crosses on it. So these charts are for the rest of the city, except for the urban villages, because those haven't quite, and again, this is in your packet. If you can't read this chart, this is on the next page, I believe, in your packet. That just to confirm that that hotels and storage units and motels are existingly permitted in other zones in the city, several other zones in the city, and that we are not changing those at all. So I wanted to make you all comfortable that this is only a small localized change proposed.
The prior page doesn't refer to bed and breakfasts and guest house. Are those not currently permitted in Central Issaquah?
I think we're just not dealing with them at this time.
Okay, so that's not being touched. Okay.
Correct.
Are those currently permitted?
I would guess so. I wouldn't know what zones off the top of my
Okay,
head.
so that will
Do you
still-
know off the top of your head?
Okay, so in some place like Confluence, you could still have a B&B. You just wouldn't be able to have a hotel. Okay.
I would guess yes. So any other questions on?
thing you might want to address is nonconformities. So we would be creating nonconforming
Oh, because they can't.
hotels located outside of Pickering now.
Right, and if, let's say you're a hotel that's now not in one of these zones where you used to be permitted and now you're not, and you want to put on an addition, you'd have to go through a different process for increasing a nonconformity, and it's a little bit of a different process depending on what you're asking for. It's not impossible to add on to a nonconforming use, but it's definitely harder than if you're completely permitted when you put your addition on or you make a change or something. However, something like if, I believe it, not being a current planner, but if some disaster happens, which of course we hope would not happen, you are able to rebuild. I think it's a little more generous on rebuilding a nonconforming use so that we don't penalize you for that. Other questions on this one? If you're comfortable moving this one forward,
So this is a public hearing.
Yeah, so I was just letting him know sort of what comes next. It would go to, that's okay, you're going. It would go to the Land and Shore Committee in April. Yeah, I'm a little nervous. And then council would take action then in May if, just to let you know sort of that you don't, this isn't one of those that you get to, that we would want you to look at for 8 meetings. You know, this isn't intended to do that. So now, if there's anybody that would wish to speak, are
I've
you
got
ready?
one more question. The storage units on the Rowley properties that are on Mall Street, I assume those wouldn't be included in this because there's a development agreement, right? Okay.
Does this impact what Rowley can and cannot build because of the development agreement?
No, because they already have a development agreement.
Not until after it expires.
In,
25 more years?
Yeah.
okay.
I'm sure we will still be here.
No.
Okay, with that, I'm going to open up the public hearing. So if anybody is out there that would like to make any comments on what Trish just reported on, please come to the,
I gave this to another person.
Derek?
I think Susan's the chair.
All right.
It's like 4 questions.
Got to do the whole thing with the name, address, and all that?
Yes.
All right. Derek Doak. I live at 238 246th Way Southeast, Sammamish, Washington, and I'm a property owner in Issaquah on commercial properties, and a past member of the Economic Vitality Commission here. So what I'm here to talk about is trying to understand the changes in the zoning as it relates to self-storage. I own property over in the West Newport neighborhood, and actually 2 properties. One's being developed right now is Riva Townhomes is our property, 36 townhomes going in. And I own property next to the Gateway where you have 400 apartments and 43 senior living facilities. And then I've got property right next to that, which has been under review and development internally in our office for a enclosed, climate-controlled self-storage to fill the demand and need of a community. My concern with this is we got a heavy concentration on the north side of the freeway, and the neighborhoods on this side aren't going to get the development and have access to storage except going through town or go down to Gilman or go across the freeway and try and store. Or they go into Factoria, which is what they currently do, because we have the highest rates of self-storage per square foot. The reason why we're not building apartments anymore right now in the area, we can make more per square foot doing self-storage. You got Issaquah has the highest rates, and by limiting the use here, you're going to just put a monopoly on the current self-storage, and the rates will go higher, so it doesn't help the consumers. At the end of the day, what I love about working with Issaquah and the city, which I have in the past, is you guys definitely put all residents first, not just the ones that come and talk and not just the ones that write a big check. So that I thank you for, and that's why I like working with Keith and his team. But this is just one of those ones where I'm looking at a supply and demand issue, and right now, currently, within our area where our property is, it's 5.55 square feet of storageable space available, and the demand is 8.2 to 8.3 per square feet, and that's in current market conditions. So you add a bunch of smaller apartments, a bunch of smaller residences. What we've found in other communities where people store things on their balcony, people store things outside, people rent those little storage boxes and they put them on their property. They get the landlord approval because they want the rental rate. So there's other things that can happen with that. And when Rowley pulls their self-storage out, that's going to even be less of a amount of self-storage. I wholeheartedly believe that self-storage has a place. I truly believe that, and a look. And new self-storage facilities now look a lot more like apartment buildings. You know, the one we're planning on called the Gateway Storage, which would be at the end of the Gateway neighborhood, is more developed like a lodge type of look. It has that earth tones, things like that to go with the community. So taking my property out of it and just looking at it, the comments from my side is making it's an amenity for the community. We're heavy, intense on north side. Getting across the freeway is already difficult as it is. Now get people trying to get storage in and out, and we're going to have more of a supply need in the next 5 to 7 years than we currently have. And we already have a high demand for storage in the area. So thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
Anybody else would like to make a comment?
I will. Mel Morgan from the Development Commission. I guess this is a real head scratcher to me on the hotel one. I don't think I've ever seen a city try to limit hotel development within a downtown core to such a small area. Because the way I see it, as I understand, it's really only the Costco Pickering area that we're going to be able to build hotels in out of all of the 900. Well, we can do it in West Newport, but there's really not land for it there. And I guess I just don't see the reason why we wouldn't include, say, the mixed-use area. If you go up East Lake Sammamish, and there's a lot of retail and restaurant uses, and hotels usually want to be developed around nightlife type things where there's restaurants, and so you stay in a hotel, you want to be able to go out of the hotel and walk to a restaurant, something like that. I think the Costco area, Pickering, is going to be mostly a corporate campus, and to say you can only build a hotel right there, to me, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. And thinking that this is a long-term plan, why we would want to make that kind of limitation on where we put hotels. So I know there may be other reasons, but I'd suggest you take a hard look at why it shouldn't be in the mixed-use retail area. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak?
David Kapler, 255 Southeast Andrews Street. I think if we're going to limit these two uses of hotels and the self-storage, we've got to have an awful good reason for doing that, and I don't see it. I mean, self-storage can be pretty ugly, admittedly. That if that's a concern, let's address that. It's nice in that it doesn't require a lot of parking, doesn't require much traffic, which is why it can be put in certain places. There is one on the south side on Newport there. When that building first went up, it was a shock to me, but I don't even notice it when I go by anymore. And it was an attempt to make it look like not so much like a storage building. And hotels, let the market decide about hotels, is my thought. Thank you.
Anybody else would like to make a comment? Seeing nobody else, I will close the public hearing at 7:09 and open it up to you guys. Do you have any further? Well, first of all, does the city have any, Keith, do you have any answers to the proposals or objections that came up?
So, if we want to spend a little bit of time on why, we can do that. When we talked about this a little bit as a pre-discussion last time, I'm going to start with hotels. I think we need to take these one by one. They're really not connected. They're really two separate things, even though they're both potentially going to be talking about limiting them in their location, but I think they're two very separate things. So hotels, when we talked about this last time, there was a little bit of a conversation that you guys started about why just Pickering. If we're going to limit it to the core, that's one choice. And if it is the core, then why not Pickering and Gilman? Okay, so that's one choice. Part of the conversation about hotels is who's staying here, right? And so we actually did ask the hotels if they would give us a breakdown of their leisure versus business stays, because they actually keep track of that kind of stuff. And the interesting thing is, so Holiday Inn didn't play with us, so they didn't give us any information. But for the Marriott that's on Maple, their leisure stays versus business stays is 60-40. So 60% of their stays are leisure, 40% are business. Hilton Garden Inn and Homewood Suites, which are in Rowley's Hyla Crossing area, It's 80/20 business to leisure. Now, part of that is because Costco has a corporate partnership with Hilton. And they have a lot of their conference meetings at the Hilton, frankly. So there's some different things going on here. I think the reason why this came forward to limit it to Pickering was a belief that a majority of all of our hotel stays are business-oriented. I think the data is showing a little bit of a different kind of outcome. You know, what's going on with Motel 6 and Holiday Inn? Don't know. But they're out there too. So I think, you know, if this was a conversation that if this was our hotel generator, if almost all of our stays were being generated by our international corporate campus, then if there was going to be more hotels, why not put them close to that destination so that people might be then able to take, you know, a taxi, Uber, Lyft from the airport, come out here and not have to have a car, versus if you're locating over, you know, on the Marriott on 12th, you know, pretty much the only way you would get to Costco is by a rent-a-car.
Don't they have a shuttle? I mean, if they're doing 80% of their business to Costco, wouldn't they have a shuttle or something?
The hotels do have shuttles.
Okay. So that's one thing. I don't know.
That is one thing. So, you know, there is, you know, I think the question is, sometimes businesses locate where land is available and cheap. And, you know, there are definitely some places in the East Lake neighborhood that might fit that category. And, you know, if there was a new hotel located somewhere over here, does that make sense? You know, do we want to get down to that level of regulation? There's all these questions that I think are up to you guys to talk through.
So will this move block the proposed Mountainside Hotel?
This would not allow the potential hotel that would be behind Fred Meyer. Now, I don't know if they're still around. I mean, when the moratorium gets lifted, we'll find that out. But right now, obviously, there's no way for anybody to build a hotel unless it's in the villages or in Old Town. But in central Issaquah right now, we're still under moratorium.
Keith, quick question. How many
Yeah.
hotels do we currently have today?
So right now, there's two in Rowley. There's one on Maple. There's Holiday Inn. There's the Motel 6. And you said there's 6, so I don't know which.
There's 5.
Oh,
There's
there's-
6 storage units.
Oh,
5 hotels,
okay.
motels.
So right now, there's 5. There is a piece of property in Issaquah Highlands that was sold to a hotelier. It is where City Surf wants to build their wave pool. There's another hotel site, but the Oregon company that owns that, I don't think will build a hotel there. They were banking on either a Microsoft satellite campus or some other corporate headquarters in the Highlands, and at this point, I think they're saying that's likely not going to happen, and they've been carrying that property for probably 10 years. So it is probably more likely going to be an indoor surfing facility than it will be a hotel. But it is owned by a hotelier franchisee out of Oregon.
Could Polygon put a hotel on one of those sites across the street?
Yes.
Okay.
John?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I don't know if I agree with the theory of limiting or directing, if we want something to happen somewhere and we're saying that there's economics to make it happen there, I think it'll happen there. I don't know if we need to limit it to just that one neighborhood just because we want a hotel to go there at some point. I don't know if we need to limit it just to that one neighborhood. I'd be more in favor of, rather than letting it be wherever it's going to be, if we could be a little more broad in our, targeting of where we want that to go, and allowing where there are already hotels, for those hotels to potentially be redeveloped without having to jump through a bunch of hoops. If we want them to, if we think that's a good place to have a hotel, then it should be able to be redeveloped as a hotel, I think.
So Keith, in the Pickering area, there's only 2 hotels, right? There's the Holiday Inn, and then there's Motel 6.
Right, and Holiday Inn has been talking about an expansion.
So we're looking at it on average about 80%, 75% of our hotel capacity is Costco, and there's not a hotel next to Costco.
So of the Hilton 2 hotels, that's true. On the Marriott that's on 12th, it's actually flipped the other direction. So it's 60 leisure, 40 business.
But the Marriott doesn't have that many rooms compared to the other 2, right? So I'm thinking of total room capacity. 75% of our total capacity for hotel rooms is occupied by Costco, and there's not a hotel next to Costco.
Right. And you're right, the Hilton hotels are bigger than our other hotels.
So the idea of economic, when they look at the economics of it, they're going to build a hotel where it's the most profitable for them and maybe not be in the best place where we need a hotel, which is next to Costco.
If the current hotel that's there redevelops, then there would be a hotel near Costco, right? I mean, are we discounting it just because it's an older hotel?
I'm not discounting it.
I'm just saying, like, you're saying there are no hotels over there. That's within walking distance.
Yeah, and actually that one would still be in the allowable hotel zone,
Right.
if I'm reading this right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that particular one is the only one that's currently in that zone.
And
that
Motel
would-
6.
That would
Motel
stay.
6.
I think I echo John's original comment. I reject the narrative that by having hotels in Pickering versus Gilman, that changes who's going to drive and who's going to not drive. I think, one, if Costco is 800-pound gorilla, the hotels are going to run shuttles, and that solves that problem. And 2, people aren't renting cars because they're taking Uber to the hotel, and then they're taking Uber to their meetings too.
Mm-hmm.
I think the concern about rental car traffic circulation, I think is a non-concern. And then I think my second point is, I think if we want the whole urban growth area to be a vibrant regional destination, I think hotels are an important part of that mix. I think especially if you want to drive evening foot traffic and restaurant traffic in the Gilman neighborhood, having hotel guests there, both work and leisure, I think is an important part of that mix. People that are there for hotels tend to spend more money than people that live in apartments in the neighborhood. And so I think a hotel would be an asset to the Gilman neighborhood. I don't have as strong feelings in East Lake. I think hotels are fine there, but if people really want to not have hotels in East Lake, that's fine. But I think Gilman and Pickering, there's a reason they're both our urban growth area, not just one. And I think hotels belong in Gilman.
I have a question. This actually is about both the storage and hotels. Are there other examples in code where we so specifically dictate commercial uses to this level?
Even more.
Okay.
But things like the marijuana shop. I mean,
Oh, sure,
it's got a very specific locational
get to.
criteria.
That's what I've heard.
I saw him there the other day.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
That's a good
so
example.
that kind of stuff does happen.
Yeah. Great.
I'm curious what everyone else thinks about, having the whole urban core just be a allowing hotels in just that would be the salmon colored area, the urban core.
I have no problem with having hotels in any of the areas.
Well, I want to back up for a second. I'm actually in disagreement here. And the reason why is because this document isn't a permanent solution. This is a recommendation and a temporary one. So if we put down and we say we want to put restriction.
Ron, what are you talking about?
How
How
is
is
it
it
temporary?
temporary?
Well, we can change it if we have the need to change it, we can always change it.
I think we're trying to set it up so that we can achieve the vision.
Right, yes, but here's the point. If we want to put the hotels, and I think we need to put the hotels closer to Pickering, focus them where they're not. If it's a problem, we can always revisit this and add them back in. But we can't, I think we would be putting ourselves in a bad position to not put that restriction in now and let the hotels go where they want to go instead of putting them where they should be, closer to Costco. I hear your point about allowing or having people use shuttles and Uber. Yeah, I think the idea is also to put the hotel closer to Costco so that people can walk to work instead of having to take a shuttle or a rental car.
Yeah, I don't buy that logic at all. I don't think the hotels should be in Pickering versus Gilman. I think they would do great in both. And then, like your comment was, people should walk to work. I mean, should we only allow apartments in Pickering and not allow apartments in Gilman so people can walk? I mean, I don't think that logic stands up.
That's not the point. The point is, if you are a vendor and you come into the Costco area, you're not likely to have a car, so you may be taking an Uber into Issaquah and staying at the hotel, in which case you could actually walk from the hotel to Costco. And you can also have your meetings in the hotel as opposed to actually having meetings at the Costco property. Because they have meetings outside of Costco in the hotels, as Keith has just pointed out. So if we can get hotels to build closer to Costco, then we also have people that are going to be meeting in the hotels that have the resources to do that. And so we're not going to have people driving outside of Costco to these hotels for a meeting.
I think you're making a lot of assumptions about a particular customer or person coming into our community that we don't necessarily need to conjecture out into. I mean, just you could say the same way that, someone not familiar with the Northwest may not want to walk in the rain. That might be an odd concept. And so as someone who's been familiar, not specifically in Issaquah, but with Redmond and Bellevue, specifically having clients come in internationally, they almost always get a car. And so we need to look at what we want to have happen in the future, because right now Issaquah isn't entirely walkable, which is what would be required for someone coming inside of our community to then forego that. Since we see that in the future we want to change how we want to do it, I think then the argument needs to be more towards how we want to see our space, but this discussion about a mythical person coming into our community is, I think, derailing a little bit.
Well, when you say mythical, he just noted 75% of the capacity in our hotels is Costco.
Well, they're also the larger hotels are a partnership with Costco Travel, so the numbers are a little skewed towards that.
And more importantly, their work. We didn't confirm that they're Costco. There are other jobs.
Yeah.
There are other reasons for people to be in Issaquah. We're not a company town.
Yep. And that doesn't even count the people who choose not to stay in Issaquah because they don't feel like there is a hotel that they would like to stay in. We're missing out on that whole portion of people who may be coming into Issaquah, my parents, for example, who choose to stay in Bellevue because of the hotel stock at this point. So
I think maybe a good way to think about this, Ron, is let's say it was the other way around and there were no hotels currently permitted in Issaquah for whatever reason. And then Costco was coming to the city and saying, please, can you permit a hotel in Pickering so we can build one for all of our customers that come? Then that would make sense. Let's allow something that's not currently allowed. But here, They can, if it's so important to build hotels in Pickering, like, that can still happen. We're not blocking that. We're just saying it can all, the hotels also make sense in Gilman.
I think of the 5 different zoning districts that they're currently allowed in, I think the only one that probably doesn't make sense to continue to allow, in my opinion, just because it doesn't match kind of the vision we already established, is village residential. I think all the other, I could picture hotels in all the other neighborhoods that generally align with visions that we just spent so much time talking through in terms of nightlife and everything.
And in our initial discussion, like 2 meetings ago, I know I felt that when looking at kind of the future of how we want our space to be, I should speak for myself, and maybe others felt that that kind of area right now that is the Fred Meyer and the hillside, I didn't have a problem with hotels going in there, thinking about what this space can possibly be. And so in this future planning, I was a little surprised by trying to sequester everything right into Pickering.
I agree. I'm rereading the East Lake future vision, and hotels seem like they fit that. I mean, I wouldn't want a 10-story hotel tower because it's supposed to be small and less dense, but it's a mixed-use neighborhood.
Once we have
think
transit
hotels are part
coming
of that.
in and we have our lid, that makes Gilman more walkable from Pickering. And so I do like that idea of it. Even if there was a hotel located in Pickering, it would be more easy to be able to cross over the 90 and partake in services. So I don't know that we have to have a hotel in every area, but letting the market dictate it seems a little, at this point.
I just worry that when you say market dictates, that they're going to go for the least expensive property, not in the best interest of the community. And again, I want to reassert myself that I think having hotels in the Pickering is the best solution. We have enough hotels everywhere else. We don't have enough where we need them the most.
I don't think there's some dire hotel shortage that we're trying to
It's
solve.
not
This really feels like a solution in search of a problem.
So I'm going to focus you guys. So there's, somebody should make a motion at some point. I think your choices are approve the administration's recommendation, which would be limited to Pickering. It'd be deny and just send we don't want to limit hotels geographically. Or it's approve it to limit it to some other geography. And I think John threw out, potentially West Newport doesn't make sense. So I think you guys have 3 choices.
So I'll make a motion to approve
It'll change over.
the city's recommendations for limiting the hotels.
To Pickering.
Do I have a second? With no second, the motion fails. So does somebody else?
I'll motion to deny.
Second.
Clarification?
Any
Yeah.
discussion
So-
on that?
I have a question.
Clarification.
When you say deny, you mean no amendment on the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to be sure that's what you meant.
No amendment on the motion?
No amendment to the
amendment to
existing
hotels.
allowance for hotels. So they're allowed
Oh, okay.
where they're allowed.
You have to state it a little more
Sorry, yeah,
clearly.
motion to deny, so no change to the current zoning.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Oppose?
Motion carries.
Okay, so.
Okay, so self-storage, okay. So I don't know where to go with this. So you heard from someone who I trust knows the economics of this, and the reality is self-storage is a hot commodity. It's based on current land values, current construction costs, and current demand. Self-storage is an appealing development scenario for many builders right now, who are in that that game. If you just build apartments, you would likely not get into the self-storage business. You just wouldn't. So the concern is that, so we have one self-storage under construction right now on Gilman. It's actually a very fine-looking building, frankly, from a self-storage perspective, if you have not gone and seen it. It's next to Pagacha, and I actually think it looks pretty nice. But to the point that was made, so we have done other things in Central Issaquah, like approved architectural guidelines, which would apply to anything that gets built, including self-storage. And so that is there. But the concern, I think, that was expressed is when we lift the moratorium, if the market wants more self-storage, are we getting multiple self-storages in places where maybe that's not what we want long-term? So when you talk about urban vibrancy, self-storage would not be it. There might be 2 employees that might go out and get a coffee at some point. But, it's a big building, and from a traffic standpoint, it's not a big traffic generator, but it's definitely not a big activity generator. They are not bevies of activity. So I think you need to think about that in terms of, are those, and knowing how once something develops on a piece of property, it's probably going to be there for quite a while. So does that match some of the visions you guys have talked about for some of the neighborhoods? And is there a reason maybe that you might want to limit it to certain parts of Central Issaquah or not? Again, I think there's lots of choices here.
So if you allow apartments in every building, or hotels in every building, in every district, and then you allow storage units, you have to look at what the vision that you want for those communities is, and how much people, how much condos and apartments that you want to be able to put into those areas. And does this make a dent in what you think the neighborhood should look like?
So I think we should ban storage in all neighborhoods. I don't think it fits any of the visions. I think the point about urban vibrancy is critical, and you just don't drive street traffic. People don't treat their storage unit like their closet and stop by every couple weeks. It's just not a traffic generator. And so I don't think it fits in any of them. I think we're looking to have businesses and places where people live that drive traffic. If you have a hotel, there are people that are coming in and out every day. There are people that work there, and they're the guests. For self-storage unit, it's kind of a blank building, and it's nice if it looks nice, but it's still basically a blank facade. That's not adding to the vibrancy of the street life. And so I would actually like to see it just not being allowed use anywhere. Now, if you're going to build condos and apartments and you want to have storage units in them, like that's fine. That makes sense to me. But it's the standalone storage unit I don't think fits the vision for any of the neighborhoods.
Lindsay?
So to play devil's advocate, the idea that we're trying to create smaller units to have more density and more housing, these people are going to likely need storage. If somebody is downsizing, they will likely need storage. And so I think there's a need, particularly in the direction that we're going. Where we want to include that, I don't quite know.
I think storage units, play an important space, and you're absolutely right, especially as people move to small living spaces. That's why there's a market demand for it. But those don't belong in our transit-rich urban neighborhood. If I'm downsizing, I'm moving to Central Issaquah, and I've got someplace got to keep my old furniture, that should be, a 20-minute drive from here, nowhere close to a transit stop, because I'm only going to go there once every 3 months. Storage units still are an important part of the regional economy, but having them be within, the 10-minute walking distance of a transit stop, that seems like a poor use of land. So I think your point is totally valid, but they can still go someplace else. They can be
So
built plenty of
second-
places outside of the central area.
Second devil's advocate idea, the storage unit that was built in the Highlands has retail on the bottom floor.
We
And-
made them do that.
Yes. And so that would be another kind of proposal that I might say is if we're looking for something that makes a self-storage more vibrant, for example, if we're going into the West Newport area where there isn't retail, where there isn't a coffee shop, and we can get something like that that provides a little bit of local retail in there, that could be a good trade-off. Maybe.
I'm kind of with AJ on this. I don't particularly care for storage in the city because of the vibrancy issue, with an exception, the Costco property. Because I think there is a need for a storage facility in Pickering as close to Costco as possible because of Costco vendors. They need a place to put their stuff.
What? It's not. This isn't a warehouse. This is like where you put like
Personal storage.
That's
personal
where,
storage.
that's where our vendors, their stuff is in
I
our
don't care
storage
about
lockers.
vendors. I care about the people that are living here that have their
Vendors-
stuff. So
Right.
Costco can take care of their own facility and their own storage if they need it.
But that's not the point. These are vendors which are not employed by Costco, so they don't have a warehouse to put their goods, so they need a place to put their goods. So they use our storage facilities. But if we have a storage facility close to Costco, then the vendors could use that storage instead of the other storage lockers.
I think
that make sense to you?
No, it doesn't. You're advocating for like light industry and like warehouse space. That's what you're arguing for.
But
Ron, you seem like you know that these units are used for that. How do you know that, or how?
Okay, so if you're a Costco vendor and you're coming to Costco on a routine basis, where are you going to put your goods? Your
In
sales
a
props?
warehouse in Kent.
All right,
Most vendors come with a
Yeah, or it's-
satchel with pictures of what they're selling. So,
Yes,
I'm not-
I don't know how Costco operates in their vendor system, so I can't speak any further about this. But
from what I understand
wanna know
about
that
Costco,
for sure
Keith, do you
before
have any
talking
insight
any
you could
further.
help me out with on this? I mean, I want to fairly represent Costco in this, but I,
So,
that
so the way,
expertise.
so there's a variety, right? Because there's obviously a lot of different goods that are sold in Costco warehouses. They have, so they're planning to build, so they've got permits in to build a new office building. You guys know that. And then across the street is a parking garage. On the ground floor of the parking garage, they're planning on basically the first floor being rotating display space. So what happens if you are a vendor who has Levi's jeans and you want to sell them at Costco, you would come up and set up your display in their space so that their execs could come look at it and see what it would look like on their floor. There are people that sell Tyson chicken that actually cook the chicken and bring it to Costco to let people taste what it is they want to sell. And it's all over the place, man. So
They're not
you're-
using self-storage units to do that, right?
I hope they're not putting chicken in self-storage units. So I think what I would say is I think Ron has at least a thread of truth to what he's saying. I don't know how much, but that self-storage that's going in next to Pagacha, so that doesn't seem like it's near Costco, but it actually is. So given the new, one of their vendors who was looking to buy our building because it's convenient to Costco, also then rented space in the medical building that's on 4th. They asked if they could drive a golf cart down the Pickering Trail to get from basically their office space to Costco, hauling like chicken on the golf cart. I think we told them we weren't okay with that, but that's the craziness. It's that crazy. So there would be people putting goods in that new self-storage that's being built on Gilman, probably that's Costco related. I think that would be true. How much of that square footage will be leased up by Costco vendors? I have no idea.
Not chickens.
Not chickens.
Back to residents.
I have just a slightly different question, because I liked what Lindsay said a minute ago about storage with commercial on the ground floor. Can we get that granular here? And you said on the one on the Highlands, the city made them do that, basically.
We did.
Is that, do we have the ability with what we're looking at here to say it has to be mixed use with stuff on the
You
ground
could.
floor? Okay, that was just, I'm contemplating that still and just curious if we even had that ability.
So you'd basically go into the land use table and it would say self-storage with a certain portion of ground floor retail or commercial.
I think I'd be more open that like you can't use, I'm going to make a number up, but you can't have more than 50% of the square footage be self-storage or something like that. Because I'm thinking.
If it's going up, it's not going to make a big difference. I think you really just want the ground floor. And if it's a ground floor on a big building that's 2 floors tall, then you might get to 50%. But like looking at the one in the Highlands, ground floor is very small compared to the 5 stories.
But I think even then, if you look at the one in the Highlands, like imagine if that had been a couple floors of office space that drove traffic, and then the other floors were for storage.
But expecting a developer to be able to do retail, commercial, and self-storage.
I think I'm just, I don't want to get specific into like what they would be doing in lieu of self-storage. I think the idea is for every square foot of self-storage is less active space.
Well, let me propose another question to you all then. As far as the Gateway goes, if Gateway was to provide storage for their residents,
Well, that's permitted, right? If you can build storage.
Sure.
In
they chose not to.
That's fine.
Yep.
Most apartment builders, they try to figure out what they can actually make money on, right? And so I'm going to make money on the apartments that I can rent. I can make money on parking spaces that I provide. Probably there's a certain amount of on-site storage that they could generate revenue from, but I have not seen any do that. And it doesn't mean that they don't. I just haven't seen any.
well, I think to his point, I just want to make sure we have all stakeholders here covered. If he created storage space for his residents, would that be?
He doesn't have residents, so he's
You just have property.
He has a nearby piece of property to Gateway that he
okay,
wants to
I'm
build
sorry.
storage on.
Okay.
To serve not only Gateway, but all the other people in the surrounding. He knows AJ's got a bunch of stuff that needs a home. It'd be just so convenient. And for me too, apparently.
Okay, I thought he was actually representing
No.
Gateway, so all right, sorry about that.
So it sounds like we're considering the idea of mixed use or some kind of requirement of retail or commercial. The other thing that I think I heard earlier is maybe not in the urban core, not in the Pickering and Gilman areas, but okay in the others. How are we feeling about those types of things?
So currently proposed, it'd be banned from Gilman and Pickering, and would be allowed in.
In a part of Eastlake,
Okay.
And 221st.
right?
Okay. So my opinion is I don't think it belongs in Eastlake either. We want all of Eastlake to be vibrant, not just certain parts of Eastlake. But that's just my thoughts.
I agree. I think that when we think about how much space these storage units take up, even with the ground floor retail, it's not what we've envisioned as far as 20 years out the road. And so I would be a proponent of taking away all storage within our urban core.
So within urban core and
within
East
central
Lake?
and central, yeah.
Okay. So then we would be basically pushing anybody who wants to do,
Outside.
yeah,
It'd still be in
into
Issaquah.
West Newport or Confluence or other areas of Issaquah.
No, also not
Yeah.
West Newport and
Oh, so you're
Conquest
saying
and-
nothing in Central?
Nothing in central.
Okay.
You have to be, so you can still be in Issaquah, but just nothing in central.
So you could put it in the areas we took out, Service and Old Route 10. You could put it in the Highlands, you could put it in Tallis. You could put it in Old Town? Could you put it in Old Town?
Storage units?
Hope not.
I don't know about that.
No, I'm sorry, professional office, retail, and IC.
Yeah,
So that's not Old Town?
not Old Town.
Good.
So, do I have a motion?
Do we have a public
no,
hearing? Do we want
I think
to,
we're still
Not there
swirling.
yet.
I think it was already open.
do we
So
want to
Keith,
let the
actually, a
public
question
speak about
about
it?
the storage
Yeah,
in Pickering.
Did.
yeah.
If we decide that we do not want storage in Pickering or Gilman, Costco could still build storage because of the Costco development agreement.
They, so they could build it as part of their development agreement. But what I heard also is, that you guys were saying it could be accessory to another use. So if you wanted to build storage with something maybe, and I don't know if you want to play with that one or not, it's up to you.
Now, thinking it through the lens of the Costco development agreement, I think I'm satisfied with not having storage in Pickering.
Yeah, there's a Rowley development agreement too, and they
Right.
could certainly take their existing storage and decide to
Go up.
build something tall that
Yep.
would be used by multiple other people. I don't know how I feel about all of this. I'm not sure which direction I see
I really
points on
don't,
both sides.
I feel like I don't understand the economics of it enough to really,
Yeah. I think one of my
informed
concerns is hearing from a previous conversation that we had about storage units is that when the moratorium is lifted, that right now, the price per square foot that they can use for self-storage, I guess, makes a lot of sense. And so there's a lot of potential drive to build self-storage. And, I looked up other cities. San Jose, California, for example, has gotten rid of them because they need more housing. And, different cities have done this. So I guess I can see the idea, and I think there is a concern that when the moratorium is lifted, that we might have 5 different properties that want to develop into self-storage, and I wouldn't want that, but,
Market.
yeah.
Yeah, but
I don't see the but. I think that's the whole point, is that we're supposed to be planning for the community that we want, live, work, play. So I think this is a good example of how hotels and storage units are very different. And so they service a very different thing. And like I said, I don't have a problem with storage units. I think they're a very handy thing. I've used them myself. But putting them in the core, having them even in central Issaquah, I think it is diluting what we want as having what we've been trying to create. So I would say they can still be in Issaquah, it's just not in,
I don't know. I think about South Lake Union, Seattle, for example. They have massive storage needs there, and it's still a very vibrant community. I feel like it's not necessarily mutually exclusive to want a vibrant community and also incorporate storage into that. I mean, there's plenty of cities that have self-storage units in very, very urban areas, and they're well-used and,
well, we have some. They exist, it's,
sure.
We have 6 of them.
yeah.
Yeah.
Keith, the storage that was allowed in the mixed-use residential had the commentary on it only as an accessory to permitted use. Can you explain what that is or what that would look like, or?
So accessory to a permitted use would be like if you built residential and you wanted to put storage with it, you could do that.
So that wouldn't
But it couldn't
be-
be the primary use. It couldn't be, the thing that you talked about earlier, which is a mixed-use project where there might be some ground floor retail. That would not be, you couldn't then build 4 stories of storage above it and call it accessory to the retail on the ground floor, because there's the office with the boxes in it, right? So, it's a minor component to another use that's allowed.
I would be fine having that same language in all the zones, rather than having it being prohibited, just being allowed as an accessory. That seems reasonable.
What about that plus allowing it as only storage in the area that was proposed off East Lake Sammamish or?
Parkway.
No, I still don't like that. I think, I don't see any reason to single out a component of East Lake. If those different, if that was so special, it would be a different neighborhood. I think we should be consistent.
Oh, I don't think that matches our vision of East Lake. I think it matches what East Lake is currently.
Yeah.
And we don't want to limit
Already
that.
storage there that's probably going to stay like that, so.
But that's fine.
Yeah.
So if looking through, because we don't have to say all or nothing, are there any of these zoning districts, such as intensive commercial or village residential, where we would feel comfortable?
That's the way I was kind of trying to think about the hotels too, but, yeah, I don't,
Like, I don't mind it outside of Central. And when you think about Old Service, I mean, there's ways
Yeah.
to be close to the core without being in Central Issaquah.
Isn't that what intensive commercial is? Isn't that service
Yes,
area?
yes.
Okay. I think that's a great place for storage then. So why,
Old Service or Old 10? Which, sorry.
Old Route 10 is destination retail?
Okay. Yeah, so I think destination retail does not make sense.
yeah,
But I think intensive commercial, leaving it as permitted use seems
yeah.
reasonable.
So Keith, question, what does city council currently think, and what does Land and Shores currently
It
think?
hasn't gotten to them yet. They're waiting for your recommendation.
What's your thought?
I think.
Wow.
I
So
think
the
he-
administration's position is we should limit it to 221st and
Right.
properties fronting East Lake Sammamish Parkway. That's the administration's recommendation.
So,
We have to either.
can I make a motion?
So I've
Absolutely.
listed some, so you guys have talked about, so I'm going to try and focus you now, because it seems like we're losing energy. So you guys talked about allowing it if it's mixed use. You guys talked about a different geography, either eliminating it all the way from central Issaquah or picking some different neighborhoods to eliminate it from. And then you also talked about allowing it as an accessory use to something else, but not as a primary use. So that's what I've heard so far.
So we got to start with a motion of something. So let's put it on the table.
I've got one of,
So I think the motion is, and this isn't the motion yet, so I think the motion is to change it so that it is only permitted as an accessory for all zoning districts within central Issaquah. And so the change is to match what's currently in MRU for the rest of them, but then not touch intensive commercial.
I would, yeah, I was going to say, I would be open to leaving intensive commercial as permitted.
Yeah.
I would also potentially be open to village residential as permitted, because I think that has a different feel. For me, it's closer to our urban villages, where I think the storage being close to housing makes sense and doesn't take away from a vibrancy that we're trying to get in urban core.
Keith, are we looking to make a change for zones across the city or just zones in central Issaquah?
Central, that's
This
what-
is
yeah.
just central
Yeah.
Issaquah.
This is just
Okay.
Central,
Yeah. I don't want to touch what's permitted in like the Highlands.
Yes,
Okay,
but
yeah, it's
village
fine.
residential is West Newport.
Yes. Village
And so
Residential is
that
West Newport.
has a little bit of a different feel to me, and that's why I say it feels a little bit more like urban villages idea. It's not as dense.
Yeah. I don't want it in, what's confluence?
Let's,
Confluence is mixed-use
Sure.
residential.
Or, no, that's why I threw it out there, because I think I wanted to talk
Yeah,
through
because
this.
he was
So-
saying, if there was a motion, it would be kind of this, and I responded,
Right,
but
we're
what
trying to,
about
we're
this?
trying to work out our motion.
getting there. We're
So,
getting there.
so I think the only one, let's do it by limit. So I think we're okay with keeping intensive commercial as is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we definitely want to ban it from urban core,
Yeah.
mixed use, and destination retail.
Ban
And
it
mixed
except for.
use.
Yeah, except
Residential.
for. And so I think the only one that's maybe left to discuss is village residential.
Residential.
I would be for banning it from village residential.
Thoughts, why?
Because I think that it's not the intention of how we want to put our space. This would be a lot of space that could be used in a different, and the footprint could be used very differently from how we've envisioned where we want Issaquah to go. And the thing is that if we're saying people are going to be living in a smaller units, I mean, I feel like we're then saying, oh, but then we're trying to make accommodate for all these other things. I mean, if you're going to live in a smaller unit, then you've already made that lifestyle choice, and your decision to get a storage unit isn't actually going to be based on if it's close to you or not. You're going to need a storage unit or you're not. So having it actually take up space in our community when it could actually be something else, to me, is more of the vision that we've talked about over the last length of time.
I completely agree with you 100% for the exact same reason.
Okay. Not hard put either way.
Yeah, I agree, but not nearly as passionately. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
We're going to keep it in intensive
Just
commercial.
intensive.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, yeah,
So since
You
we've
can always
nodded,
come back
nodded, and
and change and
nodded,
make a
so
difference.
is the resultant that you're saying just not in central Issaquah? Is there
Yeah.
any area
Yeah.
in central Issaquah that,
Except for as an accessory to other use.
yeah, so and I think we're okay allowing as accessory to other use in all?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
To your point, Keith, were you simply saying there's no intensive commercial in Central?
so exclude,
There
what
is.
I'm hearing is exclude storage except as an accessory use to another use?
Yes.
Within central Issaquah?
Or all of Central Issaquah.
Except for-
intensive commercial.
Yes. Except for intensive
Is
commercial,
there
for
any
which it's fully
intensive
permitted.
commercial
Not
left?
anymore.
We took out the service neighborhood.
We took it out. So it's
We have
not
three,
intensive.
4 parcels? Okay.
So therefore,
So where are those 4 parcels? Sorry.
They're on East Spanish.
Well, they're on 229,
Be
right
right
off
here.
6. Yeah,
Right.
they kind of border it.
They're those little teeth
on
that
this side.
stayed
Like
in.
the
AJ?
dog kennel?
Yeah.
AJ, I don't quite understand when we say exclude storage except as an accessory to other use. What are you referring to by accessory to other use?
So I believe.
Page 29, if you look at the actual permitted land uses, the table is what he's referencing.
Yeah, so that's the existing text that I'm leveraging for MRU or MUR.
Basically, it's saying if you've got a residential unit and the residential apartments want to build a little set of storage with it, that's fine.
So there might be a freestanding storage unit, but it's within the context of a couple
Other
apartment
space.
buildings or something. Is that accurate, Keith?
Sorry, I was happy writing stuff. What?
So Ron was asking for clarification on the accessory to permitted use. That's the idea that you could have a freestanding storage building. It would just be in the context of some greater development.
You could not have a freestanding storage building.
So
It
if
would-
I
It
was-
would
so
have
if-
to be part of some other, it could be part of an office building, it could be part of a,
That's what I'm saying. If I'm building a 3-building project and the third smallest building could be storage.
I think it would be in the space, basically.
Yeah.
That's
we
what,
might-
that's what we want you to
Wouldn't
iron
be
out,
able to
only
be,
as an
like,
accessory to permitted
Public,
use.
would it?
so if you built, like, let's say you built an apartment project that had 2 buildings and 500 housing units, and you wanted to put some on-site storage as part of that project,
And it just happened to be in a standalone structure.
you could do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Because
you-
you would be permitting that at the same time, right?
Yeah, I know you'd never build that,
Yeah.
yeah.
As a
But yes,
standalone
they could.
building.
Yes.
You could, but it wouldn't happen. But,
Okay.
yeah.
I think we were trying to understand what accessory is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would say let's permit self-storage in IC. Even though there's only a few parcels in central Issaquah, I think it still speaks to the idea of intensive commercial makes sense for,
There's a reason they're zoned that way,
yeah.
presumably. Do I trust the existing zoning?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And when you say that, Lindsay, you mean standalone, an intensive commercial, right? Not as an accessory use?
Correct.
Okay.
So is somebody going to make that motion?
All right, so I'll motion to change the existing zoning in central Issaquah to change all zoning districts except for intensive commercial to allow storage only as an accessory use. Did I get that right?
And you're changing the recommendation to permit intensive commercial.
So can you just read that last bullet?
Okay, so motion for.
Although your words were wonderful, I think that's clear.
Okay, motion for in central Issaquah for all zones except for intensive commercial to exclude storage, except as accessory to other use.
Is that what you were intending?
I believe I had said the same thing in 2 different
Yeah.
ways. I think. Okay.
I second the motion.
All those in favor?
I'm.
Opposed?
Nope, nay.
Okay.
So, just to be clear, all those in favor, raise your hand. The 1, 2, 3, 4.
And AJ's an.
And I'm non-voting, so I'll put my hand
Yeah.
down.
That's
Make sure to
true.
check.
3,
The 3-2.
3.
2 and 3.
Wait, what?
So it's 3 to 2?
Yep.
No, it's 3 to 3. If I vote, it's 3 to 3.
Oh,
Okay.
Did you vote?
No, I'm going to vote.
And you're voting against?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a tie. Does that mean I get to vote?
So do you want to
So you guys
leave
can.
that for further discussion?
Well, so your choice. You can either, so one choice would be you guys send it forward 3 to 3. And it would be helpful for the council to understand why the 3 that voted against this voted against this. So we could either do that. The second choice is to have somebody make a different motion and see if that passes. It would need to get seconded and see if that passes. And then the third choice would, you guys ask us to do something and we bring it back to your next commission meeting. So you have 3 choices.
Let's take one more stab at it. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's hear from the 3 who voted no.
So the
Reason-
question right now,
Yeah.
if you just stop 1 minute with all your energy, we can have further discussion. And I think we really need the further discussion to look at the areas and what the impacts it would be. To just say, I don't want it in any neighborhood is not really kosher. You need to have more reasons, and I just don't like it. You know, I think that we need storage. We just have to put it in the right place. And I don't think that just saying accessory, whatever,
Other use.
is the way to go. That could end up with buildings everywhere.
Yeah, and maybe I'll just, where I am on this, why I said no is, I mean, as much as it deeply worries me that people need so much storage. But I understand it's a great business model, and I appreciate that, but it scares me, Americans. I mean, I also don't like limiting what people can do. If they want to invest in the community, then let them invest in the community. And if you get the most money for storage, it means, I don't think that's great, but I can't fault somebody for wanting to build a project like that. And the one on Gilman did surprise me. I was like, man, what is that thing going to be? And then just the other day, I see a sign. I'm like, oh, well, that's a storage unit. I was like, but okay, whatever. So that's where I'm at. Like, I'm not gonna want to limit it anywhere. And I understand that with the visions and everything we just did, I understand the principles behind what everyone says. But if people want to invest in the community, I'm not going to stop them.
I'm very aligned with that. I guess the only thing I would add is that I don't understand the economics of it and the needs of people in our community to be in close proximity. I guess I don't understand that relationship enough to make heads or tails of it one way or the other. And I wouldn't want to make a recommendation based on something I don't fully understand the needs there. And I can totally appreciate that we typically think that storage equals non-vibrant, equals not, it doesn't match what our vision is for a lot of these neighborhoods. So I want to keep that in mind, but I don't feel comfortable saying wholeheartedly, except for 4 parcels, that we can't have full-on self-storage units, because I think there are smart places that we could put them that would still allow our community to be vibrant.
Keith, can I ask a question? If we decide to ask you for more information and have it come back to us at the next meeting, how does that affect its process through, particularly with potentially the end of the moratorium coming up?
So I would say 2 things. One is we're expecting the vision conversation to be at Land and Shore at least twice, so that's through May. So I don't know when your next meeting is, but my guess is we could come back and have another conversation on this if you wanted to. My second part would be, what would you want us to give you? I mean, what would help this conversation along? Because I'm not sure. I mean, I think the dynamic is, everybody uses storage for different reasons. I had a storage unit at one point when I was in an apartment because my kayak would not fit in my apartment, and so I had to get a storage unit just for my kayak. I was glad to get a house because then I could move it into the garage.
Rather than just renting a kayak.
Long story. But people have furniture that maybe their parents gave them that doesn't fit in their place. Maybe they think they're going to save it for their kids who are never really going to want it. There's a whole litany of stories why people have stuff. We are a society of. There's at least 1 or 2 generations where stuff was really important. And unfortunately, they're still, I don't say unfortunately they're still around because I think I'm one of them. So, so that's the dynamic is people have stuff. And the question is, they don't go get their stuff and deal with their stuff daily. Most of them don't. Some do. If you have Costco vendors that are using storage spaces to store product, they might be in and out of their units fairly frequently. But for most people, they put stuff there and they pay their monthly lease rates, and they might go visit it, add stuff, take stuff out like 2 times a year. And so.
Can I give an apolitical comment? Is that addressed about just the market?
You have to come up to the.
It's up to the commission if they
Right.
want.
I was going to say you can't make it from the.
Because I've closed the public hearing, so do you want to open it again and allow this? We've done it before, it's not.
I don't have a problem with it because right now this is the closest we have to having some educated information on the market, so I'm a proponent of opening it up.
Come on.
Mr. Doak, you are back
It's apolitical.
in
Get my
charge.
property altogether. Please. No, and storage facilities, majority of the use is holiday season. 5x8s are the biggest renters out in this marketplace, and people store their holiday stuff there, Easter, Christmas, whatever the holiday, Halloween. It's surprising, but that's what they use it for. And so the proximity to where they're at, they actually put their holidays. And the other is activities. There's people that will have their hunting, fishing, scrapbooking. I know people that scrapbook in their storage facility. So it's used as the garage, because most of the garages now, as we've all seen, are a lot smaller, so you can only get, if you have your neighbors put their cars in their garage, which I like once in a while, they store them in other places. So in the communities, there's a lot of storage, and out here, the studies have shown that the 5x8s, it's not the big, huge ones you see, but it's the small ones that people are looking for, just that little extra storage. So that was it.
No, Derek, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
What are the economics of developing an apartment complex with on-site storage? How does that?
Well, the problem,
decision
the
you
reason
should
why you don't put it in on apartments, as Keith alluded to, is the cost of subterranean parking is so expensive, you don't want to give up that concrete, that 1-hour concrete thick wall to a storage facility.
Yeah.
And they don't get rented out. It's interesting is that storage facilities don't get rented in apartments, but there'll be a storage facility right next door and they'll rent there.
Cheaper off-site than a developer?
No, it's cheaper in the development for the renter. but it's more expensive for the developer because you've got to put utilities, mechanical, and things like that take up those
I just mean
spaces.
to the consumer to pay for that space.
Correct.
Typically, the apartment, property manager has to charge more for the space on site than the guy next door with the
Correct.
dedicated storage facility.
Correct, and they'll charge more in rent because they have to spend more to do the development, because it does cost a lot more to build a storage facility inside an apartment building than it does the cost just to do a standalone storage facility.
Is there anything that could be done to encourage on-site development from a zoning or code perspective that would make that math work a little easier?
For apartments, the apartment guys won't put them in. They don't include them. And I don't know how many were around in 2003 in the development phase, but that was back when Seattle and Kirkland forced all the developers to put commercial condos at the base. And they had a hard time with that. Now they do it because it's vibrant. It brings in the people, right? So you see more of that. But yeah, the storage facilities and apartments just don't get rented, and it takes up a lot of space, and it costs them too much to build it. To build an apartment building right now is about $178 to $200 a square foot to build a Type 5 construction, which is a concrete podium and stick above it. And then a storage facility is about $58 to $63 a square foot. And that's for a nice one. That's the one where you have the nice glass on the outside, you got the nice look, so it's a lot
Is that
cheaper.
concrete or stick construction?
Well, storage facilities usually will have concrete and steel, because you'll do steel framing, and then on the interior, you stay with steel. So it's a longer life of a facility, that's why.
That's still cheaper?
And
By
it's
that
still
much?
cheaper. Because you got to remember all the mechanical,
Okay.
all
You're
the
saving money.
fixtures, the finishings, all that. The drag on utilities, it's a lot more expensive to build on the apartment sites. You got finishing. Here, you're building the facility and putting in a security system. So it's a little different. So there is the demanding. Now, where it goes, again, take me out of it. Wherever it goes, there's still a need for it somewhere along the line. Hope that helps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would rather have a nicely built facility that is a nice, big facility than having little ones all over the place.
I don't think the idea of saying as an accessory to is really saying that there's going to be a separate building that
Standalone.
somebody, I think it's really saying if an apartment wants to put units down in their garage, they're allowed to.
Well, how have developed, Trish, sorry, Joe.
I think that'd be allowed to do that anyway. If they're using those units for the people who are renting their condos, I think that's.
So Joan,
required.
your concern is about allowing it as an accessory use?
Well, just me, I would rather see a really nicely landscaped, nice building where there's quite a few units in it than having smaller units throughout the city. That's just my thought.
Trish, how have, as it's previously been allowed in the mixed-use residential with this asterisk, how have developers been doing it? How has the accessory to be permitted been used?
In mixed use, I don't know, have we gotten a storage unit in mixed use? Right, I don't think we've gotten one in Central yet, with that asterisk.
With that, yeah, okay.
The one on Newport that looks like a castle came in because there was no zoning that prohibited it. And so after it came in and it was built, then they changed the zoning that didn't allow that to continue.
So that's not a castle?
And so that's why I think that's why we really need to look at the zoning and see what we want in each thing, so. Again,
I think the only argument I'll make, Joan, and this is repeating the conversation Lindsay and I were having, if your concern is, well, we need to have a storage somewhere, I absolutely agree, and I don't think we should ban it in the whole city. It specifically doesn't belong in Central Issaquah. So I think if your concern is, well, there is a legitimate need in the community for storage, I think you can absolutely agree with that sentiment. We're just specifying particular parts of the city where it's not the best use. I think everyone in the commission would agree that it's okay that there would be more self-storage being built in Issaquah as it continues to grow. We're just trying to choose where that is.
yes, I think that's all we might come at it in different ways, but I think that's all, we're all trying to get right there.
Okay.
So do we allow it in everything, in nothing? Where? Do you want to be specific? This is up to you to look at. So we had one motion, 3-3. We can have additional motions to change, to add, to do whatever you want. So do you want to come up with a decision tonight, or do you want to go back and look at the areas of the city and say yes and no, I don't want it here, yes, I want this? Or do you want to make a decision? So it's up to you. So Lindsay.
I was going to move to have the administration come back in our next meeting with more information on the demand for these self-storage units, because I think the thing that's driving this is a concern that we're going to get a lot of self-storage units all at once. And so I think we need a little bit more information about that to say, is that a valid, you're shaking your head.
I'm not sure. So, I think we can talk to people who are interested in doing that. We can talk to the developer who's building the one on Gilman and try and get information. It's not like I can call Storage R Us and they'll tell me that, hey, here's the demand in Issaquah, and that'll be satisfied by 3 or 4 new storage facilities, right? I mean, I don't know that kind of information exists. Derek might know otherwise, and he may or may not want to share that.
We're at least getting cost per square foot, price per square foot, which suggests that there's a high demand, but maybe I'm wrong in the idea that I thought this was coming up at this point because the moratorium is ending and we want to potentially preclude a large influx.
Preclude or bend it, right? I mean,
Yes.
so the question is yes. I think what we believe to be true is that right now, and you heard it tonight, right now there is demand for additional storage units in our community. If we preclude it throughout our community, then that demand will be transferred to North Bend or Snoqualmie or Bellevue or somewhere else.
Or elsewhere in
Sammamish,
Issaquah.
yes.
Or elsewhere in Issaquah, exactly. Or just-
Where else
Right.
in Issaquah?
So you could build it in the Highlands, you could build it in Tallis, you could build it in IC outside of Central, or maybe even inside of Central. So that's kind of where you'd be limited to.
That's about all that's left, yeah.
I don't think we have to worry about the demand. I think our job is to look and see which areas it fits. As Ron said, you can always come back and change things. You don't want to do that. But you want to come up in with a good idea of what you want. But I think that I don't care how much demand it is. For all I know, no more will be built, or there'll be 12 in the areas that you believe they should go in. You're looking at a vision. Where do you want this to be? How do you want the communities to be set up? So, I don't care about Costco. I think Costco can take care of themselves. I know that I have a lot of clients that, they're moving in and out of houses. They want it for 2 months, 3 months, and they're gone. So they need that. But they don't go and see it every day. They put it there, and when they move it once. But where does it fit in the city? That's the only question.
So we're continuing to have the conversation, but I think what we need to be talking about now is what our next step is as far as a motion. Are we?
I don't think we're going to learn anything more from the staff. So I think my suggestion is if the 3 of you guys aren't going to support the existing motion, we forward it at 3-3.
Or we come up with another motion.
But I don't think there is another motion.
Well, is there anything from the 3 of you?
I'll make a motion to preclude all storage within Central Issaquah. So basically, taking it out, so not having it front the East Lake Sammamish. I'm taking the staff suggestion, except for I'm taking out their amendment of Lake Sammamish Parkway Southeast,
So that's the same as mine, but then dropping it
but dropping
as,
the
allowed as
accessory permitted use.
Yeah, I'll second that.
That's more extreme than where we were before.
Yeah.
Okay. Just clarify.
Yeah, we're trying to really push this to see, do we need to
Thanks for
send this, do we
compromising.
need
Yeah,
to send this
appreciate it.
3-3, or do we,
That's-
you know,
Yeah, okay.
you can always make a motion.
No, I don't know.
The motion's been seconded.
Okay, so the motion's been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Might need
Can you
hands.
raise your hands? Just 'cause it's hard to hear.
Opposed?
So 3-2,
Joan.
and Joan.
And
where'd you
Joan?
go?
Opposed.
Okay,
John.
3-3. Does anybody else want to make a motion?
Okay, so, you know, we've done this twice now. It's come out the same, so I don't think that unless we're really different, we're going to come up with a different emotion. So I propose that we send it on 3-3, that,
And has everybody who voted, so that was your motion. Is somebody going to second that?
I'll second that.
I can't make a motion, so
Oh,
go for it.
I motion that we move to put our discussion forward to council as a split decision, saying that we have, you know, basically representing that we have one group saying we don't see this as being what we want to have in Central, and another group saying we want to be able to let the market drive and have the most economic vitality possible, and put it to them.
I have a second.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
awesome. Thank you, guys.
When are they going to talk about that?
April 19th.
April
right,
19th.
April 19th.
Great, more things for us to go and talk to them
April
about.
19th will be a
It's a big day.
happening council committee meeting.
A what?
Happening.
That's spring break.
I don't have spring breaks, I don't know.
No, then AJ will, or the-
Okay, so we have one more thing on the,
I don't enjoy such things at this stage of my life.
okay, I've lost control. We have one more thing on the docket, and that's ADUs.
I got to run, so, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
So Kristen
Not you.
would like to present. Think about what we talked about, John. So Kristen would like to tell us all about ADUs.
I would, very much. So, let me start this way. Accessory dwelling units. I hate the word subordinate, but that's what they are. They're subordinate dwelling units that are added to, created within, or detached from a single-family primary residence with a separate entrance that provides basic requirements for living. And when we look at
I'm not going.
When we look
Okay.
at accessory dwelling units within our
John's gonna
department and
join
within
John
the
for
city, it really becomes an accessory dwelling unit when it has a cooking unit, when it has a stove and oven there, not just a microwave that's plugged in, but a stove and an oven.
Do they have their own address?
They
Or that
do.
depends?
They're required to have their own address.
But you cannot buy them separately.
Correct. It is rented out. So up here I have samples. The first one, these are all in Issaquah. The first one on the left is a detached. You can barely see the other roof sticking up behind it. There's a basement. This one's in Tallis. It's down below in the back. And then this one, also in Old Town, is over the garage. So you may recall that you worked on a housing strategy in 2017 with other commissions, and the city council adopted it in September 2017. There were 9 strategies involved in the housing plan. This is focused on the first strategy. So the first strategy says remove barriers to facilitate the construction of ADUs, accessory dwelling units, particularly processing and cost. So some of the policy issues that came up were ADUs are intended to be an accessory unit, so keep it that way. City code should encourage the creation of ADUs while respecting the neighborhoods where they are located, particularly the parking, entrances, and consider allowing them in all neighborhoods. The city should seek opportunities to minimize the regulatory costs for the construction of ADUs, and actions could include permitting process, continued exemption of impact fees, and connection to utilities. So this is where our primary focus is going to be tonight. And then the last one is the city will consider ways to help promote ADUs and get more people to want to develop those. So some of the benefits of ADUs. Why do them? They create affordable housing options. They foster and support extended families, so maybe you need a place for your mom, or your kids are coming back home after college and you don't want them in the house, they're going to the ADU. Allow family members, primarily older adults, to live independently at a reduced cost. Potentially qualifies first-time home buyers for larger home loans, provides an extra income for them, or you have more choices in using your home, and provides extra income for mortgage payments, home repairs, anything that you may need to get done. So our existing code requires a land use permit, which is a level 1, in addition to the building permit that they have to get. A covenant must be recorded with the county saying that we have an ADU here. A property owner lives in one of the units, either in the primary residence or the ADU, that this is the address, and that if we violate any codes, we agree to get rid of the ADU. One ADU per, I just talked about that. One ADU is allowed per legal lot, so you can't have one in your basement and one above your garage. It's one or the other. You cannot exceed more than 40% of the total square footage of the ADU and the primary residence combined. The door may be located on the front or the side, but it has to be screened. So the idea is that you don't want it to look like a duplex. AHA.
I don't get it.
And one off-street parking space is required. What don't you get?
Screened.
The screening?
Yeah.
So it just kind of, you don't want it to, you want the view to be mitigated from the street. So you want it to still look like a single-family house. So you might have the door off to the side of the front, but you put some lattice work, and plants up in front of it.
No, I get the screen. What's wrong with it looking like a duplex?
Changes the character.
It changes the character. It starts to look more multifamily and maybe more rental, and people want it to look like a single-family house.
But aren't duplexes generally allowed?
They're allowed, they're allowed in the single-family duplex zone. That's it. And ADUs are allowed pretty much everywhere.
Okay.
So we started this. I got to tell you, this was out of my wheelhouse. So this goes everywhere. It touches engineering and building and billing and permitting and stuff that I haven't done before. So I don't know if this will help you, but it helped me. So we looked at all the different kind of issues that were out there. We had additional water meters required for different reasons. We had a lack of education and marketing. There were people who couldn't do an ADU because of the 40% requirement. Maybe they wanted to convert a basement, but if 40% meant that they had 100 square feet over here on the side of the basement, they didn't know what to do with it. So that was a barrier. It was also hard to calculate. ADUs can be hard for emergency crews to find. There was elimination of an ADU that came up recently, that the process wasn't clear on how to do that. I already have that one up there. I duplicated a few things. Owner occupancy came up. Do we want to require owner occupancy? Lack of character, said, is that an issue? It kind of goes to AJ's question. And then parking, that had come up a couple of times, thinking that people were parking on the streets.
So why did you mark the final 3 as not an issue?
Well, I was going to go through those. So let me start at the top. Additional water meters, that can add about $15,000 to the cost of an ADU. So we said that needs to be addressed, and we've done it. We won't really talk about it tonight. That's an administrative amendment. We are no longer requiring that you have a second meter. Now, if you have more fixtures than your current meter can allow, you may have to upgrade your meter, but we're not going to require it. A second one just automatically. They're often treated as duplexes too, so that's part of it. So we're going to clarify some just documents that we have in-house that's treated as a duplex, and so that they don't have to do that. Education's clear. We need to educate people on that you can do it. Here's how you do it. So we'll do that. Convert the entire floor, I think I talked about that one, why that was difficult. That's a code amendment that we'll talk about. Hard for emergency crews to find. Fire requires right now that they already put in a 4-foot walkway. It's not in the land use code. We want to see it there anyway as part of the character as well. So we're doing that as a code amendment, or we're proposing that. Elimination of the ADU is a process, but it's also a code amendment. But the last ones, let me skip down to owner occupancy. We decided that was not an issue. We want owner occupancy because people tend to feel like properties are going to be given more attention if the owner lives there. Whereas if the owner lives in Colorado and you've got renters that are there, they may not take the same kind of care of the house or the yard that the owner would do. And we looked at 47 different cities, and of those, only 10 did not require owner occupancy. It's a general feeling across the board. Lack of character, we decided wasn't really an issue, and we've kind of found a way to address that. If it does, we'll get to that in a minute. We hadn't heard any complaints about it. And same thing with parking. It had come up that it means additional on-street parking, but it doesn't. There have been no complaints. I talked to code enforcement, and nothing's come up regarding that. So we decided not to address that one at this time. So as I kind of mentioned, it's a three-part process. We have the code amendments that we'll talk about, and that is under your purview. So that is what your recommendation is regarding tonight. There are administrative amendments that I talked about that we're doing in-house currently. Marketing and outreach. We are going to work on that with Arch and the other Arch cities because this has become a regional issue, as well as potentially financing. This came up through Arch, and it's making banks more aware of it and what a benefit it is to the property owners. But it's also potentially, and Arthur's here to talk about it too, looking at ways to potentially help finance these and help homeowners build ADUs, whether it be a regional thing like our trust fund that we have currently or cities doing it independently. So I'm starting, this is under your purview. So the first amendment that we're proposing is just adding clarification in here that a single family structure with an accessory dwelling unit is not considered to be a duplex. That way it's in code and not just in our internal documents. So it's out there. That addresses the extra meter thing. This is kind of small, but this changes it from a level 1 process to a level 0 process, which means that all they have to get is a building permit, not a land use permit. And this knocks off about 8 weeks from their time, and it also knocks off about $500 from the permitting process. So while this really isn't under, this is a different part of the code, but you can see here, we've knocked off the $500, but we are giving them the option to do, so right now they could do a pre-application meeting, but it would cost them $2,500. So we're saying now you have the option, if you would like, to do a pre-application meeting, but it's only going to cost you $250. Now before that, there's also, if they want to do it, a collaboration meeting, which costs nothing. This just formalizes it and makes sure that all the departments, so it's optional. What is this one? Oh, this clarifies that it initially said that it could only be located within a single-family house, and this says that it can be within or detached from. And then the other part down here is the grandfathering of existing dwellings. There are, I know, lots of ADUs located in the city that do not have covenants, therefore they are not legal ADUs. This gives them a process by which they can legalize it. It adds value to their home if they do legalize it. And so we didn't have a process in place. So this is part of it. Part of that would include they have to do an inspection with that. That gets attached to a building permit, and then we have a record of it, and it's all hunky-dory, right? Well, this goes back to the elimination. We had something come up recently, and they thought they eliminated it, and they hadn't. This adds process, and what we did is it requires an inspection to ensure the removal of the stove oven unit, that kitchen piece. It also has to be recorded with the county, and that has to be shown to us. This goes to the size. So I explained part of the issue with the 40%. Excuse me. It's hard for people to calculate. It's hard for applicants to calculate. And so what we're proposing is just simply, you cannot exceed 1,000 square feet. And the 1,000 isn't a random number. It's what is used currently and will continue to be used in Issaquah Highlands and Tallis. So it's consistent with what they have. They could go over that 1,000 square feet if it's located on a single floor and the increased square footage makes more efficient use of that space, like the basement scenario. And if the ADU has outside walls and increased size that will allow for architectural elements to help it blend better within the neighborhood. So that goes to addressing the character that we talked about earlier.
I think this is really elegant. This is nice.
Okay, good. This addresses the 4-foot wide walkway. It's currently addressed by fire, but it's not obvious to property owners when they walk in that they have to do it, so we're just including it in the code. And it does have to be on the address side of the street so that fire, I can't remember who asked if it had to be addressed, but so that fire can find them from the street side. So that's it for the proposed code amendments. I talked about the other pieces of the $15,000 and clarifying all that paperwork in-house. And we're also planning on doing a step-by-step, this is how you do it, and if this happens, then this may happen, just to let them know that it's not as clean-cut as it may look. You know, you might have to increase the size of your meter, or you might have to do something else that does, to meet code. And working with Arch is another piece of this, and other jurisdictions. And that's all I have. Next steps are going to follow the hotels and storage units. So they go to Land and Shore, commit Land and Shore on April 19th, and then back to council on May 7th. And then we will continue to work with Arch and the other jurisdictions throughout 2017 and 2018. Arthur, I've been doing all the talking. Do you have anything to say? And
I'm
do
going
you
to
have any
open
questions for
up
Arthur?
the public
Okay,
hearing.
I didn't know if he had a piece of this presentation that
Oh,
he
he
wanted
did?
to add on to. Do you want to say anything? Okay.
Yes?
Well, I'm sorry, no, thank you. I'm here mostly to help answer questions if you have questions.
Okay, so you don't have an update. Okay, so, but there is still, I have to open the public hearing at 8:37 and ask if there's anybody that would like to speak.
Hey, so Connie Marsh. Interestingly, one of these went to River and Streams a couple of days ago because they want to do an ADU in a 100% constrained critical area property. So that I don't think you should have an accessory dwelling unit allowed in a 100% critical area constrained properties. And when you say how they can expand, I don't think that we want them to expand into the critical areas to actually harm the environment as the extra unit of a parcel. We want to have them, but we don't want to have negative impacts from them, right? So I don't know how it resolved. I didn't get to go to that meeting. There was another one happening, so. Did that make sense?
So seeing no other people willing to comment, I'm going to close the public hearing at 8:39 and open it up for questions.
I've got quite a few questions. So one, I would like to address parking. We have one, in my neighborhood, we have one unit that has a accessory dwelling unit installed. And they basically thumb their nose at the whole parking thing, and they park on the street after the police have already told them they cannot, but the police will not cite them. So we have a resident, and I can give you the address later, but they actually do park on the street. And we've got another neighbor who wants to build an accessory dwelling unit, and they are using the same argument. They don't have enough parking beyond their, for their own unit, and so they are going to put the accessory dwelling unit parking on the street as well. So I think parking will be abused. It may not be an issue globally yet, but I think it will be. Two, the other question I have is about furnace, central or a separate heating unit. If we have a conversion to an accessory dwelling unit, how are they going to get heat? Would it be separate from the housing unit, and would it be the same?
That's covered under the building code, way out of my purview, but they're required to have it, and there are standards that set up how that is done safely and
Okay.
correctly, but that's out of my purview. And as for the parking, every ADU, so every single-family home is required to have 2 off-street parking spaces. Every ADU is required to have 1 off-street parking space.
Can you say the first half of that again? Every dwelling unit?
Every single-family dwelling unit is required to have 2 off-street parking spaces.
So if I have one-bedroom house and I want to expand it to make it a three-bedroom house, do I have to generate any additional parking spots?
I don't think so, because your one-bedroom house would have had to have had 2 in the first
Okay,
place.
but if I take the same one-bedroom house and then I expand it, become a two-bedroom house with an ADU, I now have to add a parking spot, even though the house is the exact same size with the exact same number of bedrooms.
Yes and no. It has to be off-street. So if your driveway is long enough and off the street to accommodate, and your garage, if you can accommodate all 3 cars between your garage, and it's paved, between your garage and a driveway that isn't long enough to keep it off the street, that qualifies.
Okay, no, I get that, but I just wanted, that I was more asking that question to make a point.
Okay.
That, like, adding bedrooms does not require parking,
Correct,
but adding ADUs does require parking.
correct.
And the other question is, as far as firewall, this is probably getting into the code, but if you have in my neighborhood, it's really common to have daylight basements, and they're converted to finished basements. If you rent out the bottom floor, wouldn't you have to put in fire protection on the floor itself?
Arthur latched onto this better than I did. He might remember it better, but you are no longer required to have the 3-hour firewall between the 2 units. If something, if it's an owner-occupied ADU. Yeah.
Okay. Which gets my second question, or my third question, and that is, if you build a unit to have an accessory dwelling unit, and that is then sold, and someone purchases it with the accessory dwelling unit and decides, I'm going to live here at first, and then, I'm going to move, and I'm going to rent both units out. How would we address
So
that?
part of the covenant is that they are required to let any future owners know that there is an ADU located there. And then that new owner is responsible for maintaining compliance with our codes and standards. If that doesn't happen, and if we hear about a code violation, then they are required to remove that ADU.
Okay.
So, can I?
Uh-huh.
Everything said was accurate. I just wanted to point out that's one of the primary purposes of the recorded agreement. So that when people are buying a home, they see a recorded agreement, and in that recorded agreement, it has the clarification that one of the units must be owner-occupied. So that's another way to help, because banks, et cetera, are looking at that document. So it's a way to help reinforce that requirement.
Anybody else?
I had some questions that were specifically about the grandfathering in of units that are right now not compliant. So let's say you want to make your unit compliant, you don't fit, like, for instance, the 4-foot code for fire and rescue. What options do you have?
Well, that is why we would require the inspection prior to accepting the covenant. They would have to come up to code.
Right. So
Right.
one of
So
the
it's-
reasons that we wanted to have this be an action item is because it was specifically to affect for affordable housing, to be able to have people age in place, to be, so we're talking about a vulnerable population who we're asking to then say, if they're out of compliance, to then register, to say, and then they don't meet their inspection, and then they're now out what they've been doing in the shadows. Is there anything that we have for people who are in a situation who are not able to get compliant, how to help them?
Not at this time, and that would be part of the financing piece that we would talk about with Arch and all the other regional cities.
We're talking about things like taking out a $500 fee for changing the level, and then on the next one, you have things talking about how to make it more attractive, like a bay window. Bay windows are far more expensive than the $500 they've saved. So, while that is not a requirement, it is a thing of saying, hey, how can we help make them more attractive in our community? I'm not seeing how we're actually helping vulnerable people in our community from this. This is, to me, looks a lot like compliance of the city better charting the accessory dwelling units that we have, that we want to then encourage them being built, but it's not actually helping the affordable housing piece that we were trying to target.
Getting them in here, period, helps the affordable housing piece. because it's a good way to get a smaller unit for someone who can't afford something over in Atlas or a bigger building that's been built. So just getting more of those in the city helps to address that in the first place.
So that helps by adding units that don't exist and have yet to be built.
Correct.
I am curious about units that currently exist, situations that are currently non-compliant with what we're moving forward with, and are for situations that are for residents that are low income. How do we help this merging of situations? I'm not seeing a solution.
If they want to be, if they choose to become a legal unit?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to try to clarify on one of your points, the city is removing the $500 fee requirement.
Yep.
And the 250 is optional. That's only like if you have a complex situation and there's a lot of staff involved, and it's like maybe it's easier to sit down. So there's
For instance,
no.
if you're not compliant.
No, that's an optional provision for any situation. So there's right now, as drafted, there is no explicit code application costs related to getting the ADU.
Except for the inspection, yeah. Oh, no, you're right, never mind.
Right, the way it's drafted.
So
So
if
from that
I
point
have a
of view,
unit
this-
that is not compliant and I want to make it compliant, but I don't have the
Right.
funds to be able to get it up to code, what are my options?
At this point, there isn't an option for a person, and that's why we added the financing tool, and the financing tool was where it came, didn't come from Code Arch, it came from similar conversations in other cities with the point you just made. And the thought was, is there any way to try to create a financing program that might help people on a more limited basis to be able to create units? We tried to do something about 10 years ago with King County, and they were using federal funds, and that was making it very challenging because they had all these rules and things, and we couldn't quite figure it out. I have learned in the last month in doing some background research that there is another region where they're looking, and I don't know if they're saying coming soon, where they're looking at trying to get some private funding where the strings are more lean, where there aren't so many strings. And so we're kind of watching to see what they pop up with. So that's why we added that fourth bullet, is to try to help deal with it. We don't have an answer right at the moment, but it's being raised for exactly the reason that you stated.
So I want to go back to the solution that we're trying to address, or the problem that we're trying to address, is affordable housing through creation of ADUs. And you had a great chart there that talked about the barriers and the solutions. I want to throw a few more possible barriers out there.
Okay.
Just so that we can kind of discuss them. So obviously in some parts of the city, namely the Highlands, one of the barriers is the lot size and things like that. I don't think that's a barrier that can be addressed. But when you're talking about down on the valley floor, wasn't there a requirement that 50% of the property had to be impervious surface?
Yes.
Okay, so I would
Depending
think
on
that
where
would
you
be a barrier to adding additional square footage to a unit. Are we addressing that at all?
So first, to be clear, we're not talking about the Highlands. They have different codes, and they do allow ADUs. And for smaller lot sizes, which may come here, an MUR or something like that, not expecting a whole lot of single family in the urban core. But where some of the smaller lots are, they're always the basement options. And in Old Town, they do them over the garages. It can be done. If you want it badly enough, it can be done. Impervious surface we talked about, and so far it came up with both the parking and the walkway. And with the walkway, when you put in the 4 feet will not count towards your impervious, so that's no longer a problem, and it has been in the past. So that won't be a problem anymore. Driveways, because that hasn't been an issue so far, we didn't see it. But as far as adding on to your property, it could be, but then you just need to find another solution. Impervious is not something I think that the city is real willing to give on for extra square footage. If you can get a 500 square foot ADU in there, that's a good affordable unit for someone.
Right, and just another question is, that's why we changed it, so we said it can be detached above the garage or in the house to make more options. So if you have hit the impervious, You can go above your garage, which doesn't add to your impervious, or part of your house already that doesn't add. So we tried to give more choices to solve that, to help
Okay,
solve that.
I hear that, but if we're talking about barriers, if we're talking about we currently have a low ADU rate and we're trying to increase that, why we would keep a barrier that would keep somebody from being able to build in their backyard, I don't know.
Right, so I would make, I'll call it only anecdotal, but from a practical point of view, I have about 40 slides of ADUs and 1 or 2 are detached. The vast majority are going to be created in daylight basements, carved out spaces. Maybe someone's adding the garage and they put it above a garage, or they take an existing garage and put it above. The cost is so much less to do it that way that the cost of adding a new space, and the one that, if you could have seen it, my guess is from looking at the picture, it was an old probably structure that was there anyway. So it's not, yes, there may be situations where people are adding new space in a separate structure, but the vast majority of times they are incorporated within a footprint, either carved out or above or a small addition to an existing space. And I think that's driven as much by economics as anything.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so I make that point, and then
And
you might
Keith-
want to.
Yeah, Keith just brought up too, he reminded me that in Old Town, one of the things that they have been talking about is impervious surface, and they're talking about revisiting that because 50% is a little outdated. So that's a good point to bring up when we have that discussion as well.
And the last thing I'd add on that, I think also keep in mind, one of the arguments in favor of allowing ADUs everywhere is that the idea is having ADU or not having ADU doesn't change the bulk of the buildings and the neighborhood. And so the idea is you're having structures that either are very large single-family homes or a structure that is a single-family home and ADU in the same space. And so in terms of impacting the character and bulk of the neighborhood, you're agnostic to ADUs or not ADUs.
If it's within the same structure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
within the same footprint.
Yeah, okay. I was just trying to think, what are the barriers? Are there any other barriers that we could also address?
So I'll push back on the parking one, and I think Ron's point was actually illustrative. In Seattle, the parking is the hot topic because all the housing activists are trying to get rid of it, and the people that don't like ADUs are trying to keep it in. I think we should drop the parking requirement. I don't think the fact that you're having an ADU versus just having an additional bedroom does not mean that you should have a different parking requirement. I think we should have parking requirements because we're not Seattle, but I think the fact that you have an ADU versus not having an ADU does not mean that you need to have a different number of parking spots. I think particularly because the people who use ADUs are usually people that are either elderly or people that are low income that are renting. These are people who oftentimes aren't driving as often, and then having the extra parking spot, it just isn't used for some of the ADU use cases. So I think yes, in many cases, people's driveways are long enough and it's a non-issue, but I think especially on the smaller lots, you might be able to carve out existing space, but you don't have the parking spot. And so I think the reason you probably haven't heard about it is because those people aren't even trying. So I would strongly encourage dropping the parking requirement. I think parking should be set based upon the building type and the building size. Whether or not there's an ADU or not, I don't think should dictate the number of parking spots.
I think that could be a good point, that if you have somebody who isn't considering an ADU because they don't have the parking for it, not only is it a space issue, but it's also a cost of having to pave an additional area, which could keep somebody who is a lower income from being able to do that. And for the people who have a larger unit, they're already going to have a 2-car garage with a driveway, and so they would be okay anyway. Not that anybody's really going to use the driveway. They're all going to park on the street anyway.
The garage is full of stuff.
So let me counter that argument. Let's take an example. Old Town. So you have a house that has a 2-car garage use the garage, which means they have 2 spaces in the front of the house that they can't use because they need egress for the garage. So what you're suggesting is that if that unit, that house wants to build an ADU, you're okay with that, with them allowing people to park on the street. So you're encouraging people to park on the street.
Well, that's what the current code would allow, because they would count that driveway as the legal parking spots.
Yeah, that household can own
Just
3
because
cars.
people wouldn't
Nothing new.
use it doesn't mean that that's not.
So the difference is you now have 2 households in one house, right? So I think, I'm not sure I completely agree with AJ's argument that somebody who's choosing an ADU doesn't drive or is less likely to drive than anybody else. I'm not saying I disagree with you. I'm just saying I'm not sure I buy it. So the question is, so the reason why there's been a requirement for one car to come with it is concern over reaction from single-family homeowners that are worried, like Ron is, that this is going to cause an issue. I'm not, so we have certain places in the city where all the on-street parking is being used currently. And so, to now facilitate ADUs in those locations, if there's no parking that comes with it, does say that you could be exacerbating or increasing a parking demand in a curtain area. But we have lots of parts of the city that have plenty of street parking available. We have some parts that are really tight. So I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just kind of throwing that out there for you guys to think about.
But I think that's important. If there is a shortage of parking, that's a neighborhood problem, not an ADU problem.
So I want to add some context to this conversation to pick up based on what Keith was saying. What you have on the books now is something that was developed partially out of concern where what the requirement used to be in many cities is you will add 1 more parking space for an ADU. And what cities move towards as sort of that compromise between are you impacting a neighborhood or not, which is one of the things we've always been trying to juggle is allowing units in, was this idea of 1 more than required by code. And that the vast majority of properties therefore meet that, and therefore it works. So that's what you have on the books now is a shift from when ADU ordinances first came out and cities were trying to be very, very protectionist and stuff. And it was learned because we did learn some cities did that to make it prohibitively difficult to do ADUs. I would also add, just from I have a lot of personal experience with ADUs, and around a university that I used to live at, the ADUs were nanny units held by students and other young people in those homes. I had many friends who lived in them and served a role either as being present on a property in which there was another person, or often a nanny, they served as a nanny. That the age level that you see in these, you are adding 2 households. So you do have 2 independent households, and so it's not exactly the same as adding a bedroom. At least I would make that comment, because you do have 2 independent households who may each need to travel, and if you are in neighborhoods without transit service, they each need to get around. I was a resident of an ADU. I know 3 or 4 people who owned them that were my age when I bought a house, and the people who lived in the homes in the ADUs were all younger people too. So I'm just putting that out there anecdotally to you. I also did live in one in which there was an elderly person, but they also had a caretaker come and take care of them, and on that I helped on the weekends. So I mean, there is a lot of dynamics that goes on here, but it isn't the same. I don't think it's necessarily the same as. And so you do have something on the books that was an attempt to try to find the middle ground on balancing those issues now, what you have on the books now.
So Arthur, you say the vast majority of
Right.
households that would want to put in an ADU would already be compliant with their existing parking.
That's why I think why Kristen said there was not an issue, is because no one's been required to add one that you know of.
Right.
And all the ones that's
No,
been.
it's not true. There have been a couple who have been required to
Right.
add some, but not many.
Right.
And it hasn't been a big issue.
And we haven't seen that issue come up in other cities, and most of the cities in East King County have a very similar provision. And it just, that hasn't come up as a major barrier in any of the conversations.
But
we've
at the
had.
same time, we're talking about, we don't have as many ADUs as we want, and so we have to
Right.
look at.
So Mercer Island is our model of having
Yeah.
the rate, and they have the same rule.
Okay.
They're all large lot,
Yeah.
single-family homes, so they'll
Yeah,
have ample
most
parking.
of the cities that most of the cities that I looked at required a parking space for an ADU.
Okay,
that's
I'm
a
just
lot.
going off of that's the hot topic in Seattle, and they're trying to get the parking requirement dropped.
Right.
The housing stock in Seattle is different than in Issaquah. So would you say
And-
that that is not as important as it is in
And
Seattle?
their parking rules in general are very different, and their transit service is very different.
Do we have any areas in the city that do not require, or do not allow parking at night or have like permit parking?
If they, I mean, if they do, that's through an HOA. I'm not
Yeah.
aware of any.
I'm just thinking if an ADU went into one of those areas, whether or not they would get a parking permit or whether that would cause any issues.
Well, I live in a I have a homeowners association that would not allow that. And so, yes, they would have to have a permit where I live.
So right now, city code says you cannot park on the street for more than 24 hours. The problem is obviously an enforcement issue. So
Yeah.
if your neighbor, Ron, doesn't like your car parking in front of his house, he might call IPD to come chalk your tires, right? But that's a pretty low priority for them. They have other things that they're working on. So there is a parking study that's going on, that will be going on this year, and there's two parts of it. One is to do a study of Old Town, and the other is to do a study around primarily our transit parking locations that would be potentially lead to then a parking enforcement, which would be the first parking enforcement we would have in the city for time-limited parking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just bringing that up as a potential, if we're thinking about this planning long-term, ADUs and that idea of parking enforcement could be an issue.
Sorry, I need to head. Kristen, this is great. I think these are all great first steps.
Cool.
Smile.
You don't want to make a motion before you go?
What?
You don't want to make a motion before you go?
Oh, I mean, if we're like done, I'll stick around.
You could be.
I've been done since 8:30. I'll move.
Yeah,
I'll make a
so-
motion.
Yeah.
You good?
No, you've been making motions and you can't make motions.
Is it okay to
very good at
make package them all together into one motion?
Sure.
Okay. I move to Issaquah Municipal Code, including definitions, levels of review, tables of permitted land uses, accessory dwelling units, and fees imposed as amended.
And I would like to amend that motion.
I need a second.
You can't amend them.
Second,
Okay, now you can amend it.
I would like to amend that motion by adding a requirement for off-street parking. It needs to be part of the agreement.
It is there.
It is there. Parking is not in it. We talked about it, and then we agreed not do anything about parking.
Yeah,
is correct.
parking currently in the code, one parking space is required for the ADU.
I thought part of our conversation was to remove the.
No.
No.
Oh,
No.
AJ was
We
kind of
just-
proposing it, but we didn't.
That's not what
Take
the
that off.
motion is.
so, sorry.
Okay, so you're going to remove the motion.
I'm going to remove the motion.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
Now you can go.
I know you did.
It's not even 11.
Just getting started.
5 after 9, I can't believe it. Is there anything else that you need to impart to this austere
No,
body?
what a group tonight. Well done.
What's our next meeting?
Is it the 12th?
The 12th,
It's
and
on
we're
the
not
back.
meeting on the 26th?
We could. No, we, cancel. Actually, on the back of your agenda packet, it won't be transfer of development rights because the Land and Shore, the council is sending back a Talus rezone proposal to you from this past Monday night. So that, I believe, is going the 12th to PPC at the next time, right?
Yep.
So
Okay,
the back of the of your packet isn't completely correct.
Don't keep me in suspense, what is it?
What the rezone, it's parcel 9 where the slide happened.
What do they want to do?
There has been a proposal to change the zoning from what's been proposed in the end of development agreements to single family. And so you'll get to look at that.
single family right now?
No, I think it's multifamily now.
Family.
Well, yeah. So we're meeting on the 12th for that, and then are we looking at the 26th?
The 26th then would be transfer of development rights.
Okay, so we do have both of those meetings coming up.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay,
And
so
you all
with
got
that,
and you all got the email that everybody's membership is moved to June? Okay, just wanted to be sure everyone got that.
Can't vote for another month?
Yeah, sorry. But you
Okay.
did well.
Oh,
Good.
no.
Shush. Take
with
it
that,
away.
I'm going to call the meeting to close at 9:06. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Now you can talk about anything you want to talk about.